My wife left me after I lost my job. She showed up crying months later. I still remember the weight of the company badge in my hand as I walked to my car that Thursday afternoon. 15 years at Meridian Financial Partners, gone in a 20-minute meeting. Downsizing, they called it. I was 43 years old, and suddenly I had become a statistic. The drive home was a blur. My mind raced between panic and disbelief. How would I tell Vanessa? We had just renovated the kitchen. We had plans to visit Europe in the summer. I pulled into our driveway, the house I'd worked so hard to afford looming before me like a monument to everything I was about to lose. "Isaac, you're home early," Vanessa said as I walked through the door. She was sitting at our new marble island, scrolling through her phone, a glass of wine beside her. My wife of 15 years looked up, her expression shifting from surprise to concern when she saw my face. "What's wrong?" I set my keys down, the sound echoing in the sudden silence. "I lost my job today." The words hung in the air between us. I watched her face transform, concern morphing into disbelief, then something darker, something I'd never seen directed at me before. Disgust. "What did you do?" she asked, her voice suddenly sharp. "I didn't do anything. The company is restructuring my entire department. So, just like that, it's over," she interrupted, standing up. "What about the Hamptons house? What about our life, Isaac?" I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "We'll figure it out. I'll start looking immediately. With my experience." "Your experience?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Do you know how many men your age are looking for the same positions? In this economy?" Her words cut deeper than losing my job had. I expected support, comfort, maybe even a plan of action. Instead, I was watching my wife calculate losses like I was a bad investment. "We have savings," I said quietly, "and I'll get severance. We'll be okay for a while." Vanessa took a long sip of her wine, her diamond wedding ring catching the light as she tilted the glass. "A while isn't forever, Isaac." She walked past me toward our bedroom. I followed, a sinking feeling in my stomach. When I entered, she was pulling a suitcase from our closet. "What are you doing?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "I can't do this," she said, not looking at me as she began pulling clothes from hangers. Designer dresses I'd bought her for birthdays and anniversaries. "I didn't sign up for this." "You signed up for better or worse," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Vanessa paused, finally meeting my eyes. "I signed up for better, Isaac, not for worse, not for struggling at our age, not for starting over." I stood there, watching as she methodically packed her things. 15 years of marriage being folded and tucked away. I should have fought harder. I should have reminded her of our history, our love, the life we'd built. But shock had rendered me mute. She zipped the suitcase closed with finality. When she turned to face me, her expression was cold, detached. "Sorry, I can't be with a loser," she said, the words striking me like physical blows. "I deserve better than this." I said nothing as she called a car, as she dragged her suitcase downstairs, as she walked out our front door without looking back. I said nothing because there was nothing to say. In the space of 3 hours, I had lost my career and my marriage. That night I sat alone in our house, my house now, surrounded by the trappings of a life that suddenly felt like a facade. Our wedding photo smiled back at me from the mantel, a frozen moment of happiness that now seemed like a stranger's memory. The silence was deafening. No clicking of Vanessa's heels on the hardwood, no soft humming as she got ready for bed. Just the hollow echo of my breathing in a house too big for one person. I picked up my phone, staring at the screen. No messages, no missed calls, not even a courtesy text asking if I was okay. 15 years, and she had discarded me as easily as yesterday's newspaper. As I lay in our bed that night, the empty space beside me felt like a chasm. Had she ever really loved me? Or had I just been a provider, a means to the lifestyle she craved? The questions circled my mind like vultures, denying me sleep, denying me peace. In the darkness, I finally allowed myself to cry. Not just for the job I'd lost, but for the illusion that had shattered along with it. The illusion that I had been loved for who I was, not what I could provide. Morning would come, and with it, the harsh reality of starting over. But that night, I mourned the death of a marriage I realized had been built on sand all along. The days after Vanessa left blurred together. I'd wake up reaching for her only to find cold sheets. I'd make coffee for two before remembering there was only one. Small habits from 15 years of marriage don't disappear overnight, even when the person does. The first bill arrived a week later, Vanessa's credit card. She'd gone on a shopping spree the day after leaving me. Designer clothes, expensive jewelry, a weekend at a luxury spa, all on our joint account. When I called her, she answered with casual indifference. I needed to treat myself after the trauma, she said, as if she were the one who had been abandoned. Vanessa, I can't afford this. I don't have an income right now. That sounds like your problem, Isaac. Figure it out. She hung up. That night, I sat at our dining table with all our financial documents spread before me. The mortgage on our house, the vacation home in the Hamptons, car payments, insurance. Without my salary, our savings would be depleted within months. I called Thomas, who had been my friend since college. Can we grab a drink? I could use someone to talk to. Actually, I'm tied up for the next few weeks, he said, his voice oddly formal. Vanessa mentioned what happened. Tough break, man. One by one, our friends chose sides. Most chose Vanessa's. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she was telling everyone I had been reckless with our finances, that I had kept her in the dark about trouble at work, that she had been forced to leave for her own financial safety. None of it was true, but the narrative was more interesting than reality, and Vanessa had always been good at narratives. I found out through social media that she had moved in with her younger sister in Manhattan. Her Instagram showed a carefully curated new life. Cocktails at rooftop bars, shopping bags from luxury stores, brunches at trendy restaurants. Each post was accompanied by captions like, "Know your worth and sometimes you have to upgrade your life." Each one a thinly veiled reference to leaving me. People I thought were friends commented with heart emojis and "so proud of you." No one seemed to question her story or wonder how I was doing. The severance package from Meridian lasted 2 months. I applied for dozens of positions, but the responses were sparse. "We've decided to go with someone who better fits our current needs," the rejection emails would say. What they meant was someone younger, someone cheaper. To cut expenses, I sold the Hamptons house. It was a relief to be rid of it, truthfully. It had always been more Vanessa's dream than mine. I downsized my car, cancelled streaming services, and learned to cook simple meals instead of ordering takeout. Each small economy felt like taking back a piece of control. Late one night, after receiving another rejection email, I found myself staring at our wedding photo. Vanessa looked radiant, her smile wide, her eyes fixed on me with what I had believed was love. Had any of it been real, or had I just been a stepping stone to the lifestyle she wanted? I took the photo out of its frame and tucked it into a drawer, not throwing it away, I wasn't ready for that finality, but removing it from sight, a small act of self-preservation. The call from Vanessa came 3 months after she left. It was the first time she had reached out since the credit card conversation. "Isaac." Her voice was syrupy sweet, a tone I recognized from when she wanted something. "I left some jewelry in the safe. I'd like to come get it this weekend." "Fine," I said, "Sunday at noon." When she arrived, she looked like a stranger. New haircut, new clothes, even her perfume was different. She walked through the house with an air of ownership that made my skin crawl. "You've let the place go," she commented, noticing the empty spaces where some of our furniture had been. Furniture I'd sold to pay bills. "Did you just come for the jewelry?" I asked. She opened the safe, taking out the diamond earrings I'd given her for our 10th anniversary. As she turned to leave, she paused. "I heard you're having trouble finding work." The pity in her voice was worse than her earlier coldness. "I'm managing," I said. "If you need to sell the house—" "I don't need your advice, Vanessa." She shrugged. "Suit yourself, but it's a tough market for men your age." After she left, I sat on the floor of my bedroom, back against the wall, lungs struggling for air. It wasn't just the reminder of my unemployment. It was the realization that the woman I had loved for 15 years could walk through the wreckage of my life, wreckage she had helped create, and feel nothing but superficial pity. That night, I dreamed of Vanessa. In the dream, she was standing at our altar, reciting her vows. But instead of "for better or worse," she said, "for better only." I woke up with tears on my face and a hollow ache in my chest. The divorce papers arrived by courier the next morning. She wanted the house. She wanted alimony. She wanted everything she could legally take from the man she had already left with nothing. As I stared at her signature on the document, bold and unchanged from when she had signed our marriage certificate, I felt something shift inside me. The grief that had been my constant companion began to transform into something else, not quite anger, not quite resolve, but a quiet determination. Vanessa had left me because she thought I was a loser. She had abandoned our vows, our life, our love at the first sign of trouble. She had traded 15 years for status and security, and for the first time since she walked out, I wondered if perhaps I was the one who had gained something by losing her. Rock bottom has a clarity to it. 3 months after Vanessa left, I found mine at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, sitting on the bathroom floor. I'd been awakened by another anxiety attack. Heart racing, lungs struggling for air, mind convinced I was dying. The divorce proceedings were draining what little savings I had left. No job offers in sight. The house would soon go on the market. I caught my reflection in the mirror. Hollow eyes, unkempt beard, a shell of the man I once was. In that moment, a strange calm washed over me. I had nothing left to lose. "Enough," I whispered to my reflection. The sound of my voice startled me. It had been days since I'd spoken aloud to anyone. The next morning I shaved, put on a decent shirt, and called Roger Whitman. We'd worked together years ago before he started his own financial advisory firm. Our relationship had been purely professional, which meant he hadn't been part of Vanessa's social circle. He hadn't chosen sides. "Isaac, been a while," he said, genuine warmth in his voice. "Heard about Meridian. Tough break." "Yeah, well, life happens," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "I'm actually calling to pick your brain about something." We met for coffee that afternoon. Roger had aged well, silver streaking his temples, confidence in his movements. Success looked good on him. "So what's on your mind?" he asked after we'd exchanged pleasantries. I took a breath. "I'm thinking of starting my own financial consulting business, something small focused on middle-class families, not high-net-worth individuals like Meridian." Roger studied me over his cup. "That's a competitive space." "I know, but I've been thinking, there's a gap in the market. Most firms chase wealthy clients. Regular families get cookie-cutter advice that doesn't actually help them." As I spoke, something shifted inside me. The idea had started as a desperate grasp at financial survival, but now, saying it out loud, I felt genuine enthusiasm kindling. "People like my parents," I continued. "Dad worked at the factory for 40 years. Mum was a teacher. They did everything right, but still struggled to send me to college to retire comfortably. They needed personalized financial advice, not generic platitudes." Roger nodded slowly. "There's definitely a need, but can you make it profitable? Lower fees, higher volume. Technology to streamline processes. Focus on building long-term relationships, not just transactions." By the time we finished our coffee, Roger had offered to introduce me to potential clients and a commercial real estate agent with affordable office spaces. Walking back to my car, I felt something I hadn't in months. Purpose. The next weeks passed in a blur of activity. I secured a small office. Nothing fancy, just a room in a building downtown. I created a website, business cards, a service structure. I called old colleagues who might refer clients. Some ignored me. Others, seeing my genuine passion, agreed to help. The first client came through Roger, a couple approaching retirement, worried they hadn't saved enough. I spent hours preparing for that meeting, determined to provide real value. When they left with a clear plan and visible relief on their faces, I felt a satisfaction that had nothing to do with money. Word spread. Slowly, steadily, people came. Teachers, nurses, factory workers, small business owners, people like my parents, people Meridian would have turned away. I was working harder than I ever had at Meridian, but it felt different. This wasn't about status or bonuses. It was about impact. One evening, as I was leaving the office, I heard someone call my name. A woman stood outside the bookstore next door, locking up. "You're Isaac, right? The financial guy?" She smiled, extending her hand. "I'm Claire. I've seen you coming and going. Thought I'd finally introduce myself." Claire had warm eyes and an easy smile. Her handshake was firm, her gaze direct. No pretense, no calculation. Just genuine human connection. "Can I buy you a cup of coffee?" I found myself asking. "As thanks for the welcome." Over coffee, I learned Claire had owned the bookstore for 5 years after leaving a high-stress publishing job in New York. "Less money, more happiness," she explained with a shrug. "Best trade I ever made." We talked for hours, about books, about my new business, about the strange and wonderful journeys that had led us both to this small downtown street. Not once did she ask about my income or status. Not once did I feel judged by metrics that suddenly seemed hollow. Walking home that night, I realized something profound. For months, I'd been rebuilding my career, my finances, my daily routines. But sitting with Claire, laughing easily for the first time in months, I understood I was rebuilding something far more important: myself. The divorce was finalized that week. Vanessa got less than she wanted, but more than she deserved. I signed the papers without emotion. The house would be sold, the proceeds split. The life we'd built together was officially over, but as I walked out of my lawyer's office, phone buzzing with new client messages and thoughts of Claire's smile warming my mind, I didn't feel like I'd lost something. For the first time in months, I felt like I'd found something real, something mine. 6 months after Vanessa walked out, my life had taken a shape I never could have imagined. My small financial consulting business, which I'd named Commonwealth Advisors, had grown from a desperate attempt at survival into something with genuine momentum. The tiny office now had a waiting area and an assistant, Sandra, a retired school secretary who worked part-time and kept everything running smoothly. "You need someone to manage you," she'd said during her interview, and she'd been right. My approach was different from Meridian's. No mahogany desks, no expensive artwork signaling success. Instead, I created a space where teachers, nurses, and factory workers felt comfortable discussing their financial fears. I kept my fees reasonable and my advice practical. No upselling, no confusing jargon, just straightforward guidance tailored to each family's needs. I was helping people who reminded me of my parents, hardworking folks who deserved financial security but had always been overlooked by traditional firms. Their gratitude was worth more than the bonuses I'd once chased at Meridian. The business's growth hadn't gone unnoticed. A local business magazine wanted to feature me in an article about professionals who had reinvented themselves mid-career. The reporter, a thoughtful woman named Diana, spent an afternoon in my office observing client meetings and asking questions. "What made you focus on middle-class clients?" she asked as we wrapped up. "Most advisors chase wealthy individuals." I considered my answer carefully. When I lost my job at Meridian, I realized how precarious financial security can be, even for someone like me, who supposedly knew better. It made me think about all the families who never get access to personalized financial advice because they're not high value enough for big firms. She nodded, jotting notes. "And it's profitable?" "Not in the way Meridian would define it," I admitted. "I'm not getting rich, but I'm building something sustainable that actually helps people. That feels like a different kind of wealth." The article came out the following week. Diana had captured the essence of what I was trying to build, a financial advisory practice that treated people with respect regardless of their net worth. The response was immediate. My phone rang constantly. My email inbox filled. Sandra had to create a waiting list for new clients. That evening, Claire and I celebrated with takeout Chinese food in my new apartment. I'd downsized after selling the house, moving into a simple 2-bedroom downtown, walking distance from both our businesses. The divorce settlement had left me with enough to be comfortable but not extravagant. Somehow that felt right. "To unexpected success," Claire said, raising her glass of wine. "To new beginnings," I countered. We'd been seeing each other for 3 months now. Nothing rushed, nothing desperate, just 2 adults enjoying each other's company, building something honest together. Claire knew about Vanessa, about the job loss, about everything. She'd listened without judgment, offering neither pity nor platitudes. "You know what I like about you, Isaac," she said, setting down her glass. "You fell apart and put yourself back together stronger. Not many people can do that." I smiled, reaching for her hand across the table. "I had help." "No," she shook her head. "You did the hard part yourself. I just got to witness it." Later that night, as Claire slept beside me, I checked my email one last time. There, among the new client inquiries, was a name that made my heart skip. Thomas Bergen, my old friend, the one who had been too busy to grab a drink when Vanessa left me. "Isaac," the email read. "Saw the article. Impressive what you've built. Would love to catch up sometime. Been thinking about my own retirement planning." I closed my laptop without responding. Thomas had chosen sides when it mattered. Now he wanted my professional services because I was successful again. The irony wasn't lost on me. 3 days later, as I was leaving the office, Sandra called me back in. "There's someone here to see you, no appointment. Says she's an old friend." I walked back into the reception area and froze. Vanessa stood there, immaculately dressed as always, hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless. But something was different. The confidence, the superiority I remembered. It was gone. She looked smaller somehow, uncertain. "Isaac," she said, her voice softer than I remembered. "You look well." I felt Claire's words echoing in my mind. You fell apart and put yourself back together stronger. Standing before the woman who had once shattered my world, I realized Claire was right. I had rebuilt myself, not into who I was before, but into someone better. "Thank you," I said simply. "What can I do for you, Vanessa?" She glanced around the office, modest but welcoming, busy with purpose, so different from the glossy prestige of Meridian. "I saw the article," she said, "about your business. It's impressive what you've done." I waited, saying nothing. The silence stretched between us. "I thought perhaps we could get coffee," she finally said. "Catch up. It's been a while." 6 months ago, those words would have sent me spiraling, either with hope or despair. Now they were just words from someone I used to know. "I'm afraid I have plans this evening," I said. It wasn't a lie. Claire and I were trying a new restaurant downtown. "But thank you for stopping by." Vanessa's face fell slightly. "Of course. Another time, perhaps." As she turned to leave, she paused. "You seem different, Isaac." I smiled, not unkindly. "I am different." Watching her walk away, I felt no anger, no bitterness, not even satisfaction, just peaceful certainty that the life I was building now, with my business with Claire, was more authentic than anything I'd had before. That night at dinner, I told Claire about Vanessa's visit. "She wants to catch up," I said, making air quotes. Claire raised an eyebrow. "And how do you feel about that?" I considered the question seriously. "Indifferent, mostly. Maybe a little grateful." "Grateful?" I reached for her hand across the table. "If she hadn't left, I wouldn't have rebuilt. I wouldn't have started the business. I wouldn't have met you." Claire squeezed my hand, her eyes warm. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find what matters. Looking at her, I knew she was right. Sometimes the greatest success comes only after the most painful failure. Sometimes you have to fall apart completely to rebuild something authentic. 8 months after Vanessa walked out of our home with the words, "Sorry, I can't be with a loser," still echoing in the emptiness she left behind, I had built something real. My financial advisory firm had grown to 3 employees. I'd moved into a larger office space in the same building as Claire's bookstore. We'd even knocked out a connecting door between our businesses, creating a unique space where clients could browse financial books while waiting for appointments. Life had a comfortable rhythm now. Weekdays were filled with client meetings, strategy sessions, and the satisfying challenge of growing a business with purpose. Evenings and weekends belonged to Claire, cooking dinner in my apartment, helping at her occasional bookstore events, or simply walking through the city we both loved, hand in hand, discussing everything and nothing. I rarely thought about Vanessa anymore. The wound of her betrayal had healed, leaving only a faint scar, a reminder to value authenticity over appearance, substance over status. Then came the Tuesday that changed everything. I was reviewing a retirement plan for a long-haul truck driver and his wife when Sandra knocked on my office door. "There's someone here to see you," she said, her expression unreadable. "Says it's urgent." I glanced at my calendar. "No appointment?" Sandra shook her head. "It's your ex-wife." The words hung in the air between us. Sandra knew the story, the job loss, the abandonment, Vanessa's casual cruelty. She'd been my assistant long enough to understand what this unexpected visit might mean. "Should I tell her you're busy?" she asked, protective instinct evident in her voice. I took a deep breath. "No. Give me 5 minutes to finish with my clients, then send her in." When Vanessa walked into my office, I barely recognized her. Gone was the carefully maintained appearance, the designer clothes, the immaculate makeup. She wore jeans and a simple sweater. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. Most shockingly, her eyes were red and puffy from crying. "Isaac," she said, her voice trembling. "Thank you for seeing me." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "What can I do for you, Vanessa?" She sat down, hands fidgeting in her lap. "I don't know where to start." "The beginning is usually a good place," I said, keeping my voice neutral. She took a shaky breath. "After I left, I moved in with Robert." "You remember him?" "From the country club?" I nodded. Robert Harrington, successful real estate developer. Twice divorced, always had an eye for Vanessa at social events. I had noticed but trusted my wife. A bitter laugh almost escaped me at the memory. "We were together for months. He promised me everything. Marriage, security, the lifestyle I thought I deserved." Her voice broke on the last word. "Then 3 weeks ago, I found out he was lying about everything." "Everything?" "His business is failing. He's in debt everywhere. The penthouse, the cars, it was all leveraged. When his creditors started calling, he—" She paused, swallowing hard. "He cleaned out our joint account and disappeared." I leaned back in my chair, absorbing this information without commenting. Part of me, a small wounded part I wasn't proud of, felt a surge of vindication. But mostly I felt nothing. Her problems were no longer my problems. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said finally, "but I'm not sure why you're telling me this." Vanessa looked up, tears streaming down her face now. "I have nowhere to go, Isaac. My sister kicked me out after Robert left. I'm staying at a hotel, but my credit cards are maxed out. I can't even afford next week's rent." The implication hung in the air between us. She wanted money. She wanted rescue. She wanted me to be the safety net she'd discarded 8 months ago. "I made a terrible mistake," she whispered. "When you lost your job, I panicked. I was shallow and cruel. I threw away 15 years for a fantasy that turned out to be a lie." She reached across the desk, her fingers trembling as they sought mine. "I miss you, Isaac. I miss our life. I miss us." I didn't pull my hand away, but I didn't take hers either. I simply sat there, looking at the woman who had once been the center of my world, the woman whose absence had nearly destroyed me, the woman who was now asking for a second chance she hadn't offered me. "What exactly are you asking for, Vanessa?" She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "I want to come home. I know I don't deserve it. I know I hurt you beyond words. But I've learned my lesson. I understand now what really matters." Old memories surfaced. Vanessa on our wedding day, promising forever. Vanessa laughing as we painted our first apartment. Vanessa by my side at my father's funeral, holding my hand as I grieved. For a flickering moment I imagined it. Taking her back, returning to the life we'd had, the familiar comfort of a shared history, the ease of falling back into old patterns. Then I remembered Claire, her genuine smile, her unwavering support, her love for me, not despite my failures, but because of how I'd faced them. Claire, who had never seen me as a provider or a status symbol, but as a man building something meaningful. "Isaac." Vanessa's voice pulled me from my thoughts. "Please, say something." I met her gaze steadily. "I need time to think about this." Relief flooded her face. It wasn't a no, it wasn't a rejection, it was a possibility. "Of course," she said quickly. "Take all the time you need. I'll be at the Westfield Hotel, room 312. Call me any time." After she left, I sat at my desk for a long time staring at the door. Then I picked up my phone and called Claire. "Can we have dinner tonight?" I asked. "There's something I need to tell you." The cafe was quiet, tucked away on a side street downtown. I'd chosen it deliberately, neutral ground, not our usual places. Somewhere Vanessa and I had never been together. She arrived precisely at noon, looking more like her old self than when she'd appeared in my office 2 days earlier. Her hair was styled again, makeup subtle but present, wearing a simple dress that probably cost more than most of my clients made in a week. Some habits died hard. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, sliding into the chair across from me. Her eyes searched my face for clues, for hope. "Would you like something to drink?" I asked, gesturing to the menu. "Just water, thank you." We ordered, then sat in silence for a moment. Through the window I could see people passing by, hurrying to lunch meetings, walking dogs, living their lives. Once, Vanessa and I had been just another couple to them. Now we were strangers, connected only by shared history. "I spoke with Claire," I finally said. Vanessa's face tightened slightly at the name. "Your girlfriend." "Yes. I told her about your visit, about what you asked for." She looked down at her hands, twisted together on the table. "And what did she say?" "She said it was my decision to make, that she would support whatever I felt was right." A small, bitter smile touched Vanessa's lips. "She sounds very understanding." "She is." The simple truth of those 2 words hung between us. Our drinks arrived. I watched as Vanessa took a small sip of water, her hand trembling slightly. "Have you decided?" she asked quietly. I took a deep breath. "Why did you leave, Vanessa? The real reason?" She looked startled by the question. "I told you. I panicked when you lost your job. I was shallow and—" "No," I interrupted gently. "The truth, not what you think I want to hear." She was silent for a long moment, then her shoulders slumped slightly. "I was afraid," she finally said, her voice so low I had to lean forward to hear. "When you lost your job, all I could see was my parents, the constant stress about money. My father working 2 jobs until his health gave out. My mother counting pennies at the grocery store." She looked up, her eyes shining with unshed tears. I swore I would never live that way. It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. In 15 years of marriage, she had never revealed this fear. "I understand fear," I said, "but you didn't talk to me. You didn't give us a chance to face it together. You just left." "I know," she whispered. "It was unforgivable. Is that what you think? That I can't forgive you?" She looked up, hope flaring briefly in her eyes. "Can you?" I considered the question carefully. "Yes," I said finally. "I forgive you, Vanessa." Her hand moved across the table toward mine. "Then we can—" I gently placed my hand on hers, stopping her. "I forgive you, but I can't forget." The hope in her eyes dimmed. "What does that mean?" "It means I understand why you left. I understand the fear that drove you, and I don't hate you for it anymore." I paused, gathering my thoughts. But understanding and forgetting are different things. I can't unknow that when things got hard you abandoned our vows. I can't unlearn that our love was conditional. People make mistakes, Isaac, terrible mistakes, but they can change. "I believe that," I said. "I believe you've changed, and I truly hope you find happiness." She stared at me, realization slowly dawning in her eyes. "But not with you." I shook my head slowly. "Not with me." A tear slipped down her cheek. "Because of her? Because of Claire?" "Partly," I admitted. "What I have with Claire is real in a way I'm not sure you and I ever were. There's no pretense, no conditions." I paused. "But it's not just about Claire. It's about me, about who I've become since you left." "And who is that?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Someone who knows his worth isn't determined by his bank account or his job title. Someone who's building a life based on authenticity rather than appearances." I met her gaze directly. "Someone who won't settle for conditional love again." Vanessa wiped away her tear with a napkin. "I understand." Her voice was small but composed. "I always thought you needed me more than I needed you. I never imagined that I would be okay without you." I finished for her. She nodded, a sad smile touching her lips. More than okay, it seems. You've thrived. We sat in silence for a moment. Through the window, I could see Claire's bookstore across the street. She would be arranging the new releases display, chatting with customers, completely herself in every moment. No masks, no pretense. "What will you do now?" I asked Vanessa. She straightened her shoulders slightly. "Start over, I suppose. Find a job, a place to live." I reached into my pocket and pulled out an envelope, sliding it across the table. "This should help with a security deposit and first month's rent." She stared at the envelope, then back at me. "You're helping me? After everything?" "We were married for 15 years, Vanessa. That counts for something." I stood up. "I wish you well. I really do." She remained seated, looking up at me. "You're a good man, Isaac. Better than I deserved." I thought about this as I walked to the door. Was I good for helping her, or simply free of the bitterness that had once consumed me? Either way, it felt right. "Goodbye, Vanessa," I said, looking back one last time. "Goodbye, Isaac," she replied softly. Outside, the afternoon sun warmed my face as I crossed the street toward Claire's bookstore. Through the window, I could see her helping an elderly customer, her face animated as she described a book she was holding. When she looked up and saw me, her smile widened, genuine and uncomplicated. As I pushed open the door, the familiar bell jingling above me, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. 8 months ago, Vanessa had walked out of my life with 4 devastating words. "I can't be with a loser." Those words had nearly destroyed me, but they had also forced me to rebuild, to discover what really mattered, to find a strength I never knew I possessed. Claire moved toward me, concern in her eyes. "How did it go?" I took her hands in mine, looking into the face of the woman who had loved me at my worst, who had never once made me feel I needed to be anything other than exactly who I was. "It went well," I said. "I made my choice." She squeezed my hands gently. "Are you okay?" I smiled, thinking of the journey that had brought me here, the loss, the pain, the rebuilding, the unexpected joy I had found on the other side of devastation. "I'm more than okay," I told her. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." That evening, I hosted a small housewarming party in my new home, a modest but comfortable townhouse near downtown. Sandra was there with her husband. Roger and his wife brought an expensive bottle of wine. A few clients who had become friends filled out the gathering. And Claire, of course. Claire with her easy laugh and genuine heart. Claire who had seen value in me when I couldn't see it in myself. As I looked around at these people, none of whom had known me in my Meridian days, none of whom cared about status or appearances, I realized something profound. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to discover what you truly need. Sometimes the cruelest words can set you on the path to the greatest joy. Sometimes the end of one story is merely the beginning of a better one. Vanessa had walked out because she couldn't be with a loser. In doing so, she had set me free to become a winner on my own terms. The irony wasn't lost on me. Claire appeared at my side, slipping her arm through mine. "Penny for your thoughts?" I looked down at her, this woman who had taught me what unconditional love truly meant. I was just thinking about how sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead us exactly where we need to be. She smiled, understanding in her eyes. "To unexpected journeys, then." I raised my glass, looking around at the life I had built from the ashes of the one that had burned down. "To unexpected journeys."